My name is Lena Arkwright. I'm 26 years old, and I work as a pediatric nurse in a busy city hospital. 3 years ago, my parents cut me out of their lives completely. Not slowly, not after arguments, not after months of tension. They erased me overnight, blocked my number, returned my belongings in a cardboard box, changed the locks on the house I grew up in. And all of it happened because of a lie my younger sister told. A lie they believed without asking me a single question. The strange thing is, I didn't even know what the lie was at first. All I knew was that my life collapsed in one phone call. But the truth? The truth didn't come from my parents. It didn't come from my sister. It came from her best friend almost 2 years later, on a rainy Tuesday evening outside a grocery store. And when that truth finally came out, everything my parents believed about me shattered in seconds. But by then, something else had already changed. Something inside me. And that's why this story isn't really about revenge. It's about what happens after people decide who you are without listening to you. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with stories like this. And tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let me take you back to the night my family stopped being my family. It was October 14th. I remember the exact date because I had just finished a brutal double shift at the hospital. 14 hours on my feet. A flu outbreak in the pediatric wing. 2 crying parents. 1 little boy who refused to let go of my hand when his IV went in. By the time I walked out into the cold parking lot, my scrubs smelled like antiseptic and exhaustion. My phone buzzed as I unlocked my car. Mom calling. That alone wasn't unusual. My mother called often, usually to complain about something small. But when I answered, I didn't hear her usual sharp voice. I heard breathing. Heavy breathing. Mom? Silence. Then she said something that made the world tilt sideways. Don't come home. At first I thought she meant that night. Maybe they had guests. Maybe something was wrong with the plumbing. My brain tried to fill the gap with normal explanations. Okay, what's going on? Her voice turned colder than I had ever heard it. Your sister told us everything. My stomach dropped. Everything? What are you talking about? Then my father's voice came through the phone. I had never heard him sound like that before. Disgusted. You know exactly what you did, Lena. I didn't. I still don't know if the confusion in my voice made things worse. What did I do? A pause. Then my mother said the sentence that changed my life. If you ever come near this house again, we will call the police. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because my brain refused to believe it. Mom, what is going on? But she didn't answer. Instead, I heard my sister's voice in the background, soft, fragile, crying. And she said 3 words that still echo in my head. Please protect me. Then the call ended. I sat in that parking lot for almost 10 minutes, waiting for the phone to ring again, waiting for someone to explain. No one did. When I tried to call back, my mother's number went straight to voicemail. My father's phone was turned off. My sister's phone blocked me instantly. That was the moment something cold settled in my chest. I remember gripping the steering wheel and whispering out loud, "What did she say I did?" Because whatever it was, it had convinced my parents to erase their own daughter without even hearing her side. And here's the part that kept me awake for months afterward. My sister, Calla, had never lied about something small. When she lied, it was always calculated, always careful, always designed so no one could prove it. But this time, she had told a lie big enough to destroy my entire family. And for 2 full years, no one questioned it. Not my parents, not our relatives, not even the people who had known me my whole life. Except one person, her best friend. And when she finally spoke, everything changed. But before that moment came, there's something you need to understand. Because the truth about what happened that night didn't start in a parking lot. It started years earlier. Back when my sister first learned something very important. If she cried, people believed her. And if I stayed quiet, they believed her even more. And the strange thing is, looking back now, the signs were always there. I just didn't realize how far she was willing to go. If you've ever had someone twist the truth about you, you probably know that feeling. That moment when you realize the story people believe about you isn't yours anymore. And mine was about to spiral into something I never saw coming. Because the lie my sister told my parents, it was far worse than anything I imagined. And the worst part? She had been preparing them to believe it for years. But I didn't understand that yet. Not until everything was already gone. And not until the night I heard the front door of my childhood home close behind me for the last time. That's a sound you never forget. The sound of the door closing. Looking back now, I can see it clearly. But when you grow up inside a family dynamic, the strange things start to feel normal. The favoritism, the subtle blame, the way one child's tears matter more than another child's words. My sister Calla was 2 years younger than me. When we were kids, people used to say we looked similar. Same dark blonde hair, same pale green eyes. But personality-wise, we were complete opposites. Calla was soft-spoken, quiet, delicate. At least, that's how she appeared. I was the responsible one, the dependable one. If something broke in the house, I was the one expected to fix it. If our parents needed help with groceries or bills, they asked me. And if something went wrong, well, that somehow also landed on me. I didn't question it much growing up. I just assumed that was my role. But Calla learned something early, something powerful. People believed the person who cried first. One of the first memories that stands out now happened when I was 12. Calla was 10. We had this old glass snow globe that sat on the living room shelf. It was a souvenir from our parents' honeymoon in Switzerland. One afternoon I came home from school and found it shattered on the floor. Calla was sitting on the couch, crying. Big, shaking sobs. Our mother was kneeling beside her, holding her shoulders. When I walked in, my mom looked up at me with immediate anger. "Why would you do that?" I remember, blinking in confusion. "Do what?" "The snow globe!" I looked at the floor. Broken glass everywhere. Then I looked at Calla. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "I didn't break it," I said. My sister sniffed loudly. "She got mad because I touched it." The words came out fragile, trembling. My mother's expression hardened instantly. "Lena, you're 12 years old. You should know better." "But I didn't." "Stop lying." That was the first time I felt that strange helplessness. The kind where the truth is sitting right in front of you, but no one is interested in hearing it. I spent the rest of that afternoon sweeping glass, while Calla sat in the kitchen eating cookies. Later that night, she passed me in the hallway and whispered something I didn't understand at the time. "See? Easy." At first, those moments were small. A missing bracelet, a ruined homework assignment, a scratched phone screen. Calla would cry, my parents, I would assume, and I would take the blame. It became so normal that I eventually stopped arguing, not because I was guilty, because arguing never changed anything. And slowly, something else happened. Calla's lies got smarter. By the time we were teenagers, she had mastered the art of subtle victimhood. She never accused me directly anymore. Instead, she hinted. I feel like Lena doesn't like me. Or, she yelled at me earlier, but it's fine. Or the worst one, I probably deserved it. Those sentences were like gasoline in my mother's mind. Mom would immediately jump in to defend her. Lena, what's wrong with you lately? Why are you always so hard on your sister? Even when I hadn't said a word. And if I tried to defend myself, the reaction was always the same. Why are you so defensive? Eventually, I learned the safest thing to do was stay quiet, because every word I said seemed to make things worse. Calla, meanwhile, perfected her image. She joined choir, volunteered at church events, helped elderly neighbors carry groceries. Everyone loved her. Teachers described her as sweet. Parents of her friends called her an angel. Meanwhile, I was the tired older sister, working part-time jobs and studying for nursing school. I didn't have the energy to perform sweetness. I just focused on surviving. And strangely, Calla never targeted me in ways that truly ruined my life. Not yet. Her lies were always just big enough to shift blame, never big enough to cause real consequences, which meant I kept dismissing them until the day I left for college. That day is another memory that feels different now. I was 19, standing in the driveway with my suitcases packed. My mom hugged me quickly. Don't forget to call. My dad shook my hand like he always did. But Calla hugged me longer than usual. And when she pulled away, she smiled. Not a warm smile, something else. A knowing smile. Then she whispered in my ear, "Life's easier when people believe you." At the time, I thought she was just being weird. Calla liked saying cryptic things sometimes. I rolled my eyes and got in the car. I had no idea that moment would replay in my mind years later, after everything collapsed. College changed my life. Nursing school was brutal but rewarding. For the first time, I felt like I existed outside the strange gravity of my family. No one blamed me for things I didn't do. No one treated my silence like guilt. I built friendships, pulled all-nighters studying anatomy, learned how to hold a newborn baby safely, learned how to comfort parents when things went wrong. And slowly, I started believing something radical, that maybe the problem had never been me. Still, I stayed close with my family. I visited home once or twice a month, holidays, birthdays, Sunday dinners. Calla and I weren't close, but we were civil. She was 21 by then, living at home while finishing college. Everything seemed stable, normal, which is why what happened later felt so impossible. Because there had been no huge fight, no explosion, no dramatic lead-up. Just a normal Tuesday before the night my parents called me and told me never to come home again. But here's the part that still gives me chills. About 2 weeks before that call, something happened that I didn't think mattered at the time. I had come home for dinner. Calla had a friend over, a girl named Mara Ellis. They had been best friends since high school. Mara was quiet, observant, the kind of person who watched conversations more than she participated. At one point during dinner, I caught her staring at me. Not in a rude way, more like she was studying me. When I noticed, she looked away quickly. Later that night, while I was grabbing my jacket to leave, she said something that confused me. Lena, can I ask you something? Sure. She hesitated. Then she asked quietly, "Are you really as mean as Calla says?" The question caught me so off guard I laughed. Mean? Mara looked uncomfortable. She talks about you a lot. What does she say? Mara didn't answer. Instead, she just muttered, "Never mind." And that was the end of it. Or at least, I thought it was. Because 2 weeks later, my parents cut me out of their lives. And almost 2 years after that, Mara Ellis would walk up to me outside a grocery store in the rain and say something that changed everything. But before that moment came, there was the lie. The lie that destroyed my family. And the night I finally learned what my sister had told them about me. That was the night I realized something terrifying. Calla hadn't just lied. She had built a story so convincing, my parents believed it without hesitation. If you've ever had someone quietly rewrite your reputation behind your back, you know how dangerous that can be. Because by the time you hear the story, everyone else already believes it. And the lie Calla told? It made me look like the kind of person my parents could never forgive. Not ever. For almost 24 hours after that phone call, I had no idea what my sister had accused me of. That was the worst part, not knowing. My brain cycled through every possibility, every misunderstanding, every argument we'd ever had, but none of them explained the words my father had used. Disgust. Or why my mother had threatened to call the police. I barely slept that night. I kept checking my phone, hoping someone would message me, even a distant cousin, an aunt, anyone. Nothing came, just silence. The next morning, around 10:30 a.m., I finally got an answer. Not from my parents, from my Uncle Daniel. He was my dad's younger brother, and he had always been the quiet one in the family. The one who didn't involve himself in drama. When his name popped up on my screen, my heart jumped. I answered immediately. "Uncle Dan?" There was a long pause. Then he said, slowly, carefully, "Lena, I need to ask you something. And I need you to answer honestly." My throat tightened. "Okay." Another pause. Then he said the words that made the room spin. "Did you ever hurt Calla?" I sat up straight on my couch. "Hurt her how?" Silence stretched between us. Then he said it. "Did you ever force yourself on her?" The air left my lungs. For a moment, I couldn't even process the sentence. My brain kept rejecting it like a glitch in reality. "What?" His voice sounded tired. "She told your parents you assaulted her." The word hit like a physical blow. Assaulted. My chest started pounding so hard it hurt. "That's insane," I whispered. "I know it sounds extreme," he said. "But she told them it happened months ago and she's been too scared to say anything." I stood up so fast my chair tipped backward. "That's a lie." "I figured you'd say that." "Because it is!" My voice cracked in a way I rarely let happen. "Uncle Dan, I would never. I mean, that's my sister." "I understand," he said gently. "But she was crying when she told them." Of course she was. That image flashed in my mind instantly. Calla sitting on the couch, shaking, crying. Exactly like the broken snow globe. My stomach twisted. "What exactly did she say?" I asked. Another pause. Then he exhaled. "She said you came home late after drinking one night. that you went into her room and tried to touch her. I pressed my hand to my forehead. That never happened. I believe you, he said quietly. Those 3 words almost made me cry, because in that moment, he was the only person who did. But your parents don't, he continued. They won't even talk to me. They're furious. They think she's been protecting you for years. The room suddenly felt too small. Protecting me from what? They think this wasn't the first time. I felt sick, because suddenly it all made sense. All those small lies growing up, all those subtle comments. Kala hadn't been randomly lying. She had been building a pattern, planting tiny seeds for years. So when she finally dropped the big lie, it sounded believable. I sank down onto the couch. She planned this. Maybe, he said carefully. But Lena, you need to understand something. What? Your parents think they're protecting her. My chest tightened. They won't even let me explain. I know. They threatened to call the police. They might, he admitted. That was the moment the real fear hit. Because accusations like that don't just damage families. They destroy lives, careers, reputations. And I worked with children. If something like that followed me into the hospital, everything I had built could disappear overnight. I swallowed hard. Do other people know? Your parents told a few relatives, he admitted. My stomach dropped. Of course they had. Do they believe it? Another pause. I don't know. Which meant yes. The next week became a blur of panic and disbelief. I tried calling my parents dozens of times. Blocked. I sent emails. No response. I even drove to the house once after work. The same house I had lived in for 22 years. The porch light was on. My car was still in the driveway from when I used to park there. For a moment, I thought maybe everything would work out. Maybe they just needed time. I walked up the steps and knocked. My mother opened the door, and the look on her face stopped me cold. It wasn't anger. It was something worse. Fear. She stepped backward like I was dangerous. Mom! Leave. Her voice was shaking. Please, just listen. You need to go. I didn't do anything. She looked toward the hallway. I followed her gaze. And there was Kala, standing halfway down the corridor, watching. She looked fragile, small, her arms wrapped around herself. But when our eyes met, she smiled. Just for a second, a tiny smile. The same one she gave me when we were kids. The one that meant, see? Easy. My mother slammed the door before I could say another word. And that was the moment I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just dealing with a misunderstanding. I was dealing with a story my sister had carefully crafted. And the people who loved me most had already chosen which version of reality they believed. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at my phone for hours. Every message I typed felt pointless, because the truth didn't matter anymore, not when the lie was stronger. If you've ever had someone accuse you of something you didn't do, you know how helpless that feels. You start questioning everything, every conversation, every memory, every moment you might have accidentally given someone ammunition. And the worst part? You start wondering if anyone will ever believe you again. By the end of that week, 3 more relatives had blocked me. My cousin canceled Thanksgiving plans, my aunt stopped responding, and my parents mailed me a small box containing the last few things I had left at their house. At the bottom of the box was my childhood key. wrapped in a note written in my father's handwriting. Just 3 words. The door closed. I stared at those words for a long time, because suddenly they felt like a sentence, not a note, a sentence. And at that moment, I truly believed I had lost my family forever. But what none of them knew, what my sister definitely didn't expect, was that someone had been watching all of this unfold from the sidelines. Someone who knew Kala better than anyone. Her best friend. And one day, she was going to speak. After that night, my life became very quiet. Not peaceful quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like walking into a room where everyone was just talking about you and then suddenly stops when you enter. Except this time, the room was my entire family. For the first few weeks, I still believed I could fix it. I kept thinking there had to be some way to break through whatever story Kala had built. So I tried everything. I wrote emails to my parents explaining exactly where I had been on the night she claimed the assault happened. At the hospital, clocked in for a 12-hour shift. I even attached my work schedule. No response. Then I wrote a long letter, actual paper, ink, the kind you fold slowly and place in an envelope like it might carry more weight that way. I remember sitting at my kitchen table at 2 in the morning writing it, explaining every detail, how much I loved them, how impossible the accusation was, how much it hurt that they wouldn't even let me speak. I ended the letter with one simple sentence. Please just ask me one question. 2 weeks later, the envelope came back, unopened, stamped with "Return to sender." I stared at it for a long time. That was the moment something inside my chest started to crack. The hospital became my escape. Children don't care about rumors or family drama. They care about juice boxes, cartoons, and whether the nurse putting in their IV has warm hands. So I worked. Extra shifts, overnight rotations, anything that kept my mind occupied. Most of my coworkers didn't know what was happening. A few noticed something was wrong. My friend Tessa, another nurse on my floor, caught me staring at my phone one evening during a slow shift. "You look like someone just stole your dog," she said. I forced a small smile. "Family stuff." She leaned against the nurse's station. "Bad?" I hesitated, because how do you even explain something like that? "My sister accused me of something horrible," I finally said. Tessa's eyebrows lifted. "Like, stole her car horrible?" "No." Her expression softened immediately. "Oh." She didn't ask more questions, just squeezed my shoulder. "If you ever need to vent, I'm around." And strangely, that simple kindness almost made me cry. Because kindness felt rare at that point. 3 months passed, then 4. Christmas came. No call, no message, nothing. I spent the holiday working a night shift. At midnight, one of the older nurses brought a tray of cookies to the break room. Everyone gathered around, laughing quietly. Someone put on a Christmas playlist. For a moment, the hospital hallway felt warmer than my own family ever had. But later that night, around 2:15 a.m., I went to the supply closet to grab new gloves, and suddenly the silence hit me again. My parents used to call every Christmas. My dad would always say the same thing when he picked up the phone. "Kiddo, you eaten enough?" It was his version of love. And now, nothing. Just the sound of the fluorescent lights humming above me. I leaned against the shelf and whispered the phrase that had started replaying in my head ever since that note arrived. The door closed. It became something like a mantra, not comforting, just final. Around the 6-month mark, I tried one last time. I asked Uncle Dan if he could convince my parents to meet with me, just once. Neutral ground, a cafe, a restaurant, anywhere. He tried. I know he did. But the answer came back the same. They're not ready. That phrase haunted me, because it suggested something temporary, like someday they might be ready. But months kept passing, and nothing changed. Eventually, even Uncle Dan stopped mentioning it. The rumor spread quietly through extended family. No one confronted me directly, but invitations disappeared. Group chats went silent. One cousin even unfollowed me on social media. That one stung more than it should have, because it confirmed something painful. People believe the story that feels easiest, and Callie's story painted her as the fragile victim, which meant I automatically became the villain. No evidence needed, just tears. At my lowest point, about 9 months after everything happened, I sat in my car outside my apartment for nearly an hour. The engine was off. The parking lot lights flickered overhead. And for the first time, a thought crept into my mind that scared me. What if this never changes? What if this accusation follows me forever? Because even though there was no police report, no investigation, no proof, the story existed. And stories travel, especially ugly ones. I gripped the steering wheel and felt something strange settle in my chest. Not hope, not anger, something quieter. Acceptance. The realization that I might never clear my name. That the truth might not matter. And that maybe the only thing I could control now was my own life. So I started rebuilding. Slowly, quietly. I moved to a new apartment closer to the hospital, picked up extra training courses, focused on becoming the best nurse I could be. If my family believed I was a monster, then I would spend my days proving the opposite to people who actually needed me. Children, parents, families in crisis. People who judged me by my actions, not someone else's story. And little by little, something surprising happened. I stopped checking my phone every hour. I stopped rereading that returned letter. I stopped imagining conversations that would never happen. The pain didn't disappear, but it stopped controlling every moment of my day. The door had closed, so I stopped standing outside it. 2 years passed. 2 full years without hearing my sister's voice. 2 years without seeing my parents. And by then, I truly believed that chapter of my life was finished. Until one rainy Tuesday evening changed everything. I had just finished grocery shopping. Nothing dramatic, just milk, pasta, and frozen vegetables. I was walking toward my car in the parking lot when someone called my name. Lena? I turned around, and there she was, standing under the flickering streetlight, Calla's best friend, Mara Ellis. She looked nervous, like someone about to step into a storm, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. I think you deserve to know the truth. In that moment, the air felt suddenly heavy, because something in her eyes told me this wasn't a casual conversation. This was the kind of moment that changes everything. But I had no idea yet just how big that truth was, or how far my sister's lie had really gone. If you were in my position at that moment, standing in a grocery store parking lot after 2 years of silence, would you even want to hear it? Tell me, honestly, what you think. Because what Mara said next was something I never expected. The rain had started as a drizzle. By the time Mara and I stood facing each other in that grocery store parking lot, It was falling steadily, thin silver lines under the yellow glow of the streetlights. For a moment, neither of us spoke. 2 years of silence sat between us like a wall. I tightened my grip on the grocery bag in my hand. Mara, I said slowly, what do you mean I deserve to know the truth? She glanced around the parking lot like someone afraid of being overheard. Then she stepped closer. You didn't do it. The words hit me like a sudden gust of wind, not because they were new, but because hearing them from someone connected to Calla felt unreal. I know that, I said quietly. Her shoulders dropped slightly, like she had been carrying something heavy. Good. A car drove past behind us, tires hissing on wet pavement. For a second, neither of us moved. Then I asked the question that had been burning in my chest for 2 years. Why did she say it? Mara hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. Whatever the answer was, it wasn't simple. You're not going to like it, she said. I gave a hollow laugh. Mara, my parents think I assaulted my sister. I think we're past the point of liking things. She looked down at the pavement. Calla didn't expect it to go that far. My stomach tightened. What does that mean? She was angry. At me? Yes. For what? Mara finally looked up. For ruining her life. The sentence made so little sense I almost laughed again. I barely spoke to her that year. I know. Then how did I ruin her life? Mara inhaled slowly. Because of Daniel. My brain stalled. My uncle? No, she said quickly. Not your uncle. Then it clicked. My stomach dropped. Her boyfriend, Daniel Reeves. I hadn't thought about him in years. He and Calla dated for about 6 months while I was finishing nursing school. He came to dinner a few times. Quiet guy, engineering student, polite. He and I barely spoke beyond small talk. What about him? I asked. Mara looked deeply uncomfortable. He had a crush on you. I blinked. What? He told Calla once, during a fight. The rain grew heavier. Water dripped from the hood of a nearby car in steady taps. I stared at her. That's ridiculous. I know. I barely knew him. He noticed you, she said. The words felt surreal. Calla found out? Mara nodded. And she blamed me. She thought you were flirting with him. I wasn't. I believe you. Then why? She already believed it. The realization slowly sank in. Calla had built a story in her own mind. One where I had stolen her boyfriend. One where I had humiliated her. One where she was the victim. And if she believed that story long enough, maybe the rest became easier. But accusing me of assault? I whispered. Mara's voice turned quieter. That part wasn't planned. Cold unease crawled up my spine. What do you mean? She told her parents something else first. What? That you kissed him. I stared at her. That never happened. I know. So how did it escalate to this? Mara rubbed her hands together nervously. Your mom got really angry. That sounded accurate. She started asking questions, Mara continued, about whether you had ever acted inappropriately with Calla before. A sick feeling spread through my chest. And? Calla panicked. The rain tapped harder on the asphalt. Mara's voice barely rose above it. She realized if she backed down, your mom would think she lied. So she doubled down. Mara nodded. And then things spiraled. The word spiraled felt painfully small compared to the damage. My parents cut me out of their lives. I know. My entire family believes I'm a predator. I know. My career could have been destroyed. Her voice cracked slightly. I know. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I tried to process everything she had said. 2 years of pain, 2 years of isolation, because of a jealous argument about a boyfriend, because my sister needed to protect a lie. Finally, I asked the question that mattered most. Why are you telling me this now? Mara hesitated. Then she said something that made my chest tighten. Because she's about to do it again. What? She's lying to your parents about someone else. A chill ran through me. Who? Her new roommate. What kind of lie? Mara looked directly into my eyes. The same one. My stomach turned. You're serious? She's been hinting that the roommate makes her feel unsafe. And my parents believe her? They're already talking about confronting the girl. I felt anger rise for the first time in years. Not explosive anger, something colder, controlled. You came to me because you're worried she'll destroy someone else. Yes. And you think I can stop it? Mara nodded slowly. You're the only person who knows what she's capable of. The rain soaked through my jacket, but I barely noticed, because for the first time in 2 years, the narrative had cracked. Someone knew the truth. Someone from Kala's side. And that meant something important. The story wasn't untouchable anymore. Still, one problem remained. Mara, I said quietly, telling me this doesn't change anything. Her brows furrowed. What do you mean? My parents won't believe me. But they might believe me. I studied her face. Would you tell them? She didn't answer immediately, and that silence told me something else. She was scared. Kala would hate me, she said softly. I exhaled. 2 years ago, I would have begged, pleaded, tried to convince her. But something inside me had changed since then. Instead, I simply said, I understand. We stood there for a moment in the rain. Then Mara asked quietly, Don't you want to clear your name? I thought about that question, about the returned letter, about the note in my father's handwriting. The door closed. For a long time I had believed that was the end of my story. But now I wasn't so sure. Because the door might have closed, but the truth? The truth had just started knocking. And the strange thing was, for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't sure if I wanted to walk away anymore. Tell me honestly, if someone destroyed your life with a lie, would you fight to expose it? Or would you move on and protect your peace? Because what happened next forced me to make that exact decision. And once I made it, there was no turning back. After that night in the rain, Mara and I sat in my car for almost an hour. Neither of us turned the engine on. The windshield slowly fogged up while we talked. She told me everything she knew. How Kala had complained about me for years. How she often described me as jealous or cold. How she liked telling stories where she looked like the misunderstood younger sister. None of that surprised me. What surprised me was how carefully Kala had managed her image. She never told the full story. Mara said quietly. Just pieces that made you sound bad. That sentence stuck with me because it explained something I had struggled to understand for 2 years. Calla didn't lie randomly. She edited reality. A comment here, a complaint there. A story that sounded harmless by itself, but when you stacked them together over time, you built a completely different picture of someone. By the time she accused me of assault, the groundwork had already been laid, and my parents were ready to believe it. I sat back in the driver's seat and stared through the rain at the empty parking lot. So what do we do? Mara asked. I didn't answer right away, because part of me was still that girl standing outside my childhood home, begging my mother to listen. But another part of me was the woman who had survived 2 years without them, the woman who had rebuilt her life piece by piece. And that version of me didn't want revenge. She wanted truth. Quiet, unavoidable truth. Mara, I said finally, would you tell my parents what you told me tonight? She hesitated again. I could. That's not the same as will. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her bag. I'm scared. Of Calla? Yes. I nodded. That made sense. My sister had always been good at turning people against each other. If you tell them, I said carefully, they'll have to face what she did. And if they don't believe me, that's their choice. The rain kept falling. Finally, Mara asked, do you want to be there? The question hung in the air between us. For 2 years, I had imagined confronting my family, standing in front of them and demanding answers. But now that the opportunity existed, I wasn't sure I wanted it. Still, something inside me said this mattered, not just for me, but for whoever Calla planned to accuse next. Yes, I said quietly. The meeting happened 3 days later, Sunday afternoon, at my parents' house. The same house where I had grown up. The same house whose door had been slammed in my face 2 years earlier. I arrived first, not by accident. I needed a moment alone before everything exploded. When I stepped out of my car, the familiar smell of pine trees and damp soil hit me instantly. Nothing had changed. The mailbox was the same. The garden my mom used to obsess over still lined the walkway. For a second, it felt like stepping into a memory. Then the front door opened. My father stood there. He looked older, not dramatically, but enough that it caught my attention. His hair had more gray. His posture was slightly more tired, and when he saw me standing in the driveway, his face tightened. Why are you here? His voice was flat. No warmth, no curiosity, just distance. Mara asked me to come, I said calmly. His eyes narrowed. Mara? Before I could answer, another car pulled into the driveway behind me. Mara stepped out slowly. She looked nervous, but determined. My father's confusion deepened. What's going on? Inside the house, I could see my mother standing in the hallway, and behind her, Calla. She froze the moment she saw me. For a second, something flashed across her face. Shock. Then it vanished, replaced by the familiar, fragile expression. The one that had fooled everyone for years. My mother stepped forward quickly. Why is she here? Her voice carried the same fear I remembered from the night she slammed the door. Mara swallowed. I asked Lena to come. Why? Mara looked between them. Then she said something that immediately shifted the atmosphere. Because the story you believe about her isn't true. The silence that followed felt heavy. My mother's expression hardened. Calla told us everything. I know. And we believe our daughter. I know. Calla spoke for the first time then, her voice soft, shaky. Mara, what are you doing? But Mara didn't look at her. She kept her eyes on my parents. 2 years ago, she said carefully, Calla told you Lena assaulted her. My mother's shoulders stiffened. Yes. That didn't happen. My father's jaw tightened. You weren't there. No, Mara admitted, but I know how the story started. Now Calla's voice sharpened slightly. Mara, stop. But Mara continued. It started with Daniel. My mother frowned. Her old boyfriend? Yes. Calla's fragile mask flickered. Mara, this isn't funny. I'm not joking. The tension in the room rose instantly. My father stepped forward. Explain. Mara took a breath. Then she said the sentence that shattered everything. Calla told me she accused Lena because she thought Lena stole Daniel from her. The room went completely silent. Calla stared at her. That's not what happened. But Mara kept going. She told me she panicked when your mom got angry. She said if she backed down, you'd think she lied, so she escalated the story. My mother's face went pale. That's not true. Mara's voice stayed steady. She admitted it to me. My father slowly turned his head toward Calla for the first time since I arrived. He looked uncertain. Calla? And in that moment, something incredible happened. For the first time in 2 years, my sister didn't cry. She froze. Because the story she had controlled for so long had finally met someone who knew the beginning. And the fragile narrative she had built, it was starting to collapse. If you've ever seen someone realize their lie is about to unravel, you know the look. It's not panic at first. It's calculation. Calla's eyes moved quickly between each of us, me, Mara, our parents. And I realized something in that moment. This confrontation wasn't over, not even close, because people who lie this carefully rarely surrender easily. And Calla was about to make one last attempt to save the story. For a few seconds after Mara finished speaking, no one in the room moved. It felt like the house itself had stopped breathing. My father stood near the doorway, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. My mother was gripping the back of a chair like she needed it to stay upright. And Calla was still frozen halfway down the hallway. Her mind was working. I could see it in her eyes. People like Calla don't panic right away. They calculate. Then she did exactly what I expected. She started crying. Not loud, dramatic crying. The quiet, trembling kind that had worked for her all her life. Mara, why would you say that? Her voice cracked in the exact same fragile way I remembered from childhood. For a brief moment, my mother instinctively stepped closer to her. The reflex was still there. Protection. But something had changed, because this time, my father didn't move. He kept looking at Mara. Did she actually say that to you? Mara nodded slowly. Yes. Calla shook her head quickly. That's not what I meant. My stomach tightened. Here it was. The revision. The soft rewrite. She's twisting my words, Calla continued, wiping her eyes. I was upset about Daniel back then, but that doesn't mean Lena didn't. That's not what you told me, Mara interrupted. Calla turned sharply toward her. Mara, please. The word please carried a warning underneath it. I had heard that tone before, the kind that meant, stop talking. But Mara didn't back down. You told me the accusation got out of control, she said quietly. You said you never thought your parents would cut Lena off. My mother's grip tightened on the chair. What? Kalla's voice rose slightly. That's not true! But Mara continued. You said if you admitted the truth, they'd hate you. The room shifted. I could feel it. My father's expression changed from anger to something more complicated. Confusion. He turned slowly toward Kalla. Did you say that? Kalla hesitated, just for a second. And that second was enough. Because for the first time, the certainty in my parents' faces cracked. I watched my sister realize it. Her eyes darted toward me, and in that moment, I saw something I had never seen before. Not confidence, fear. Because the story she had controlled for 2 years wasn't airtight anymore. There was another witness, another version. And suddenly, my parents didn't know which one was true. Kalla switched strategies immediately. Her tears intensified. You're all ganging up on me. She turned to my mother. Mom, you believe me, right? My mother looked shaken. Kalla, I just want to understand. I told you what happened. Her voice trembled dramatically. I've been living with this for years. The performance was flawless. If I hadn't grown up watching it, I might have believed it too. But Mara spoke again, and this time her voice was firmer. Kalla, stop. The word landed harder than anything else so far. Stop pretending this is about trauma, Mara continued. You told me you were jealous. Kalla's crying abruptly paused. Just a flicker, but enough for everyone to notice. My father straightened slowly. Jealous of what? Mara didn't hesitate. Of Lena. The silence that followed felt thick. My father looked at me for the first time since I arrived. Not with anger, not with disgust, with uncertainty. Then he turned back to Kalla. Is that true? Kalla shook her head quickly. No! But Mara kept going. You said Lena always got attention, that people respected her, that Daniel liked talking to her more than you. That's not what I meant, Kalla snapped. But the anger in her voice broke the fragile victim image. My mother noticed. Her brow furrowed. Kalla, Mara continued quietly, you told me Lena needed to be knocked down a little. My heart skipped, because I remembered something suddenly, that whisper years ago in the hallway. See? Easy. Kalla looked around the room like a cornered animal. Her voice became sharper. You're lying! Mara didn't raise her voice. No, I'm telling the truth. My father stepped forward slowly. Kalla, did you ever tell Mara that the accusation went too far? Kalla's breathing became uneven. I might have said something like that, but... So you did say it. That's not what she's making it sound like. The calm narrative was unraveling fast now, and for the first time, I saw the full weight of realization settling on my parents. 2 years. 2 years they had cut their daughter out of their lives, without hearing her side, without asking a single question. My mother's voice trembled. Kalla, look at me. Kalla refused. Did you lie about Lena? The room held its breath. For a moment, I almost believed Kalla might finally admit it. But then she did something I should have expected. She pointed at me. She's manipulating you! The sudden accusation stunned everyone. She's always hated me. Calla continued desperately. Now she's using Mara to turn you against me. My father frowned. That doesn't make sense. You don't understand, she cried. She's been waiting for this. Mara shook her head slowly. Calla, you're doing it again. What? Changing the story. That sentence landed harder than anything else, because suddenly the pattern was visible, even to my parents. Calla's eyes moved quickly between them, and I realized something. She knew she was losing. The lie had survived for 2 years, but now it was exposed to daylight, and lies don't survive daylight very well. My father finally turned toward me. For the first time since that phone call 2 years ago, he actually looked at me, not through me, at me. His voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. Lena, did you ever touch your sister? The question hung in the air. 2 years of damage balanced on that moment. I answered the same way I had answered Uncle Dan. Calm. Clear. No. Just one word. But this time, my parents actually heard it. My mother's hand slowly covered her mouth, because suddenly she wasn't looking at a monster anymore. She was looking at the daughter she had shut out of her life, and the horrifying possibility that they had been wrong began settling into the room. But the real collapse of the lie hadn't even happened yet, because Mara still had one more thing to reveal, something Calla never expected anyone to bring up. When my father asked that question, "Did you ever touch your sister?" something inside the room shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet rearranging of reality. For 2 years, that question had never existed. My parents had built their entire judgment without ever asking it. And now, the answer was finally in the open. No, just one word. But it landed like a stone dropped into still water. My mother covered her mouth slowly. My father stared at the floor for a long moment. And Calla? Calla realized the ground under her story was cracking. Then Mara spoke again. There's something else. Every head turned toward her. Calla's eyes widened slightly. Mara, stop! But Mara shook her head. No. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. I didn't know if I would ever need this, she said quietly. But after what she started saying about her roommate, I kept it. Calla's voice rose sharply. What are you doing? Mara tapped the screen. Then she held the phone out. I recorded this last year. My father frowned. Recorded what? A conversation. My chest tightened. Calla took a step forward. Mara, you can't. But Mara had already pressed play. A voice filled the quiet living room. Calla's voice. Slightly muffled, like it had been, recorded across a table, but unmistakable. I just didn't think they'd go that far. My mother's breath caught. The recording continued. I only meant to scare her a little. Mom always believes me when I cry. My father's shoulders stiffened. Then Calla's recorded voice said the sentence that finally destroyed everything. If I told them the truth now, they'd hate me. So I just keep repeating the story. The room went completely still. The recording ended. For a moment, no one moved. Calla looked like someone had turned the oxygen off in the room. My mother slowly sank into the chair behind her. My father's face had gone pale. Not angry, something worse. The kind of devastation that only comes from realizing you've been wrong about something enormous. For 2 years. My mother whispered the first words. You lied. Calla shook her head quickly. It's not what it sounds like. But even she sounded weaker now, because the evidence wasn't another person's story. It was her own voice. My father ran a hand through his hair slowly. 2 years. He looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that had never been there before. Regret. Heavy. Crushing regret. But strangely, I didn't feel what I expected. No triumph. No satisfaction. Just a quiet exhaustion. Because truth doesn't rewind time. It doesn't give back the birthdays, or the holidays, or the years of silence. My mother stood slowly and looked at me. Lena, I raised a hand gently, not angry, just steady. It's okay. But the words didn't mean forgiveness. They meant something else, something calmer. I'm not here for an apology. My parents looked confused. My father spoke carefully. Then why did you come? I thought about that for a moment. Then I answered honestly. Because someone else was about to get hurt. I nodded toward Mara. She told me Calla was starting the same story about her roommate. My father turned slowly toward Calla. The look on his face now was different, no longer protective, just tired. Is that true? Calla didn't answer, and that silence confirmed everything. My mother sank back into the chair. Oh my God. For the first time in my life, I saw her look at Calla not as the fragile daughter who needed protection, but as someone capable of serious harm, and that realization shook her deeply. The room stayed quiet for a long time. Finally, my father turned to me again. His voice was unsteady. Lena, we should have listened. I nodded slowly. Yes. He swallowed. Can we fix this? The question lingered between us. 2 years ago, I might have said yes immediately, begged for things to go back to the way they were. But those 2 years had changed me. I had built a life without them, a stable one, a peaceful one. And suddenly I understood something important. The door had closed. Not just for them, for me too. I'm willing to move forward, I said calmly. Hope flickered in my mother's face. But then I added the part that mattered. Slowly. My father nodded. That's fair. And there needs to be boundaries. My mother wiped her eyes. Of course. I looked toward Calla. She hadn't moved. Her carefully constructed world had collapsed in a single afternoon. For once, she had no script. No tears left that could fix it. And strangely, I didn't feel anger toward her. Just distance. Because some bridges burn so thoroughly, they don't need revenge. They simply stop existing. I turned back toward my parents. You both believed something about me that wasn't true, I said quietly. They didn't argue. That takes time to rebuild. My father nodded slowly. We'll earn it. For the first time since I arrived, something inside my chest loosened. Not forgiveness, but closure. The truth had finally stood up. And sometimes, that's enough. Later that evening, I walked outside into the cool air. The same pine trees rustled softly above the driveway. My childhood home looked exactly the same, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. Mara came out a few minutes later. You okay? I smiled slightly. I think so. She looked relieved. I'm glad I told you. Me too. She hesitated. Do you think your parents will change? I looked back at the house. Lights glowed through the living room window. Inside, I could see my parents sitting quietly at the table, probably trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. Maybe, I said. And Kala? I exhaled slowly. Kala will have to face the consequences of her own story. Mara nodded. Then she gave a small smile. You know, the truth really does come out. I laughed softly. Eventually. Before I got in my car, I glanced one last time at the front door of the house. 2 years ago, my father's note had said, "The door closed." But standing there now, I realized something important. Sometimes doors close for a reason, not to trap you outside, but to show you that you've already walked far enough to build your own life. And the strange thing is, once you realize that, you stop needing the door to open again. If you've ever had someone believe a lie about you, type truth in the comments, because no matter how long it takes, the truth has a quiet way of finding its way back into the light. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that truth may take time, but it has a way of finding its way back into the light. And I'd really like to hear from you. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? I read your comments, and it's amazing to see how far these stories travel across the world. Also, tell me one thing. If you were in Lena's place, would you have forgiven your family or kept your distance? Thank you for listening to this story, and remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is quietly rebuild your life after the door closes.